I think that the Democrat Party makes people believe in a utopia that can't possibly exist.
Welcome to The Latter-day Lens, your home for faith-promoting, unscripted discussion of current events. If you'd like to contact us, you can send us a text message through the link in the show notes. You could also email us, latterdaylens@gmail.com. If you want to know more about the show, please visit our website, latterdaylens.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Latter-day Lens. It is so good to be with you this week. I'm your host, Matt. With me, as always, is Shawn. And Melanie is joining us because she's feeling righteous and holy this post-General Conference episode. She wants to let us know what she thought. Melanie, you actually got to go to General Conference, right?
Yes, I did.
Why did you get to go and everybody else had to watch from home?
I have a grandma with connections.
You had good seats, right?
I had really good seats. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. What does grandma do?
She's a music reader for the Tabernacle Choir. I don't know exactly what the job entails, but something along the lines of reading music. So my dad also gets the advantages of free tickets to all sorts of cool events the Tabernacle Choir is performing at.
But only one of you takes advantage of seeing living prophets and apostles and is more righteous, and that is Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
my dad just doesn't sustain Elder Gilbert yet.
Matt.
I went to General Conference a year ago. But, you know, Melanie's at BYU and her fiance hasn't had a lot of opportunities to do that kind of thing. So we're sacrificing for the new member of our family.
Melanie, you see how he made it all about him?
Yeah, it always is.
Well, we'll talk more about General Conference at the end of the episode. Yeah. But first, somebody wrote in and said, relegating FDR to the lowest tier based solely on Japanese internment feels like a straw man argument that ignores his massive role in ending the Great Depression and defeating fascism. While internment was a moral failure, comparing it to the far more systematic property liquidation and deportations in Canada suggests that FDR actually provided more restraint against public panic than he is being credited for. So that's
reaction to your comment, though. What do you?
Yeah, this listener was not happy when I said, I think that FDR should be one of the worst presidents on that list because of internment.
Does this change your mind at all?
I feel like okay, so what if the rest of the world is doing bad things? It doesn't make it okay for FDR to do bad things. I mean, I understand, like, you're constrained by the fanaticism or whatever of the times. I suppose we should judge people of the time that they're in. But it's pretty bad. In my opinion, it's pretty bad to round up U.S. citizens and put them in internment camps because of their nationality or their nation of origin. And so I have a hard time forgiving that stuff. So.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
I'm with you. Okay.
But thanks, listener. Thanks for writing in. We're really happy to hear that perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the first thought provoker. Melanie, did you want to say anything about FDR and internment camps?
Not really. No.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Leave that to the political scientists.
Yeah, not a fan of internment camps, but I'm not a historian.
Yeah. Wait. Melanie, you said, maybe revise how you said that.
I think I can straight up say I'm not a fan of internment camps.
And I'm not a historian.
I think it needs to be a but because this listener was bringing up historical context, right? Yeah, and I don't have the knowledge to weigh how important is this historical context. I think even if I were a historian, I'd still not be a fan of internment camps, but it might be a more nuanced and educated opinion.
Okay. That's good clarity. Okay.
I'm glad that we have educated listeners that like to point out facts. Yeah. And okay. So there were two stories this last week that caught my attention about sports and religion. So in the first one, I think her name's Delaney Gibb, I don't know. She's a BYU women's basketball player. She explained her team's decision to skip Sunday practice during the women's NIT by stating that her faith in Jesus Christ is simply more important than basketball. The sports world responded with accommodation and respect to this, even adjusting national tournament schedules to honor her beliefs. In contrast, there was another basketball player named Jaden Ivey. He described his religious awakening and labeled the NBA's support for Pride Month as unrighteous and condemned various cultural behaviors as wicked. The Chicago Bulls cut him for conduct detrimental to the team. So here's my question. Is the difference in how these two people were treated based more on the style or the substance of their content? Is society punishing Ivey for what he said or for how he said it?
What a good question.
Right up Shawn's alley.
Why? It's a great question. No, this is one of those genius questions that Matt brings up. Melanie, did you have an opinion before I offer mine?
I don't know, Shawn. You seem really excited, so you should start.
Well, to me, remember, okay, what era did we live in where cancel culture became the fad? That was just COVID era, right? Oh, you're muted.
Dad, you muted.
I think maybe cancel culture predated COVID by maybe just a couple years.
So would you consider with the NBA players that cancel culture?
I don't know that it's cancel culture. You're not saying an answer. You're asking a new question, Shawn.
I know. I wanted to lead it to see if it went into a discussion. Fine, I'll give you an answer. I think that during that whole cancel culture time, it was everyone. A lot of people got confused. Well, there's a big difference between unjustly canceling someone because you don't like what they're saying versus natural consequences to saying things. For example, if I'm employed, if you're employed by BYU and you start saying BYU's doing all wrong, they're actually taking some evil stances on these things, you're literally talking against your employer. Your employer is a private company. It has an organization. It has the freedom to take a stance as you want. So there's going to be a natural consequence if I start fighting against it or attacking it. Right? Yeah. So I don't think this is cancel culture. I think this is just probably a natural consequence to someone deciding to take a stand for what they believe in. And that's okay that there's consequences to it, right? Take them. So, like if you believe what you're saying, take them.
So the conduct detrimental to the team, I'm guessing, is that he said stuff against the NBA's support of Pride Month, right? He says in his thing, NBA should not be supporting that because the NBA is supporting sinful behavior, and that's wrong. So that's what they're saying is detrimental to the team. But I would say that that's not conduct detrimental to the team. That's him expressing his personal beliefs, his personal faith. How does it hurt the Chicago Bulls if he says that he doesn't support Pride Month? That doesn't hurt the Bulls or the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, of course. But I think if the NBA's stance is we as an organization support Pride Month, and one of my employees goes, no, we don't, it's evil, and you're stupid for doing that. Doesn't that... I mean, that's right. If I choose to work for a private organization, it's a free exchange. Yeah.
Because I think we've been able to see a lot of the value of athletes, right, and public sports figures is their ability to be used as a symbol, right? And so the minute you have one of your symbols, your big name basketball players saying, I don't stand for what this organization stands for, then they lose some value inherent is to like part of their job is to be a symbol, and they can no longer be used that way, which is harmful.
Well, so what I think they're actually being punished. I think that Jaden Ivey is being punished not for the substance of what he said, but for the style of how he said it.
Yeah, I can agree with that, though. Yeah,
right, because what Delaney Gibb says is, look, I'm not going to do this because I believe that religion comes before basketball, and if Jaden Ivey if it was about himself. Right? This is my belief. And like if he were to say, for example, I'm not going to listen to rap music anymore because the lyrics in it, it glorifies things that I think are evil.
Which is what he
Nobody's
does
going to get mad at him. What's that?
That is what he does say. He says that.
No, he doesn't say I'm not. That's in his rant, right? Yeah. But he doesn't put it on him. He puts it on you. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't listen to that. This is bad. So that's what I'm saying. It's the style where he's like preaching to other people, telling them what they should or shouldn't do, rather than putting it on himself, saying, I've decided. If he wants to come out and say, I'm not going to support Pride Month anymore because I think it's evil, that's different than saying the NBA shouldn't be doing it. And that's why I think he's in trouble.
I don't know if I agree, Matt. She's saying the same thing. She's just because she's got a softer approach, she's still saying, I have a belief system that goes against what you guys believe in. I'm right and you're wrong. She's still saying that. It's still an attack. Yeah. It's just a soft, more kind attack. But it is still about her personal beliefs, and it is judging the organization. I think it's the same. Yeah, he was more direct. His tactics weren't as good. Like if I say, you've got a belief system, my company, my organization, my tournament has a belief system, and I've got an opposing belief system, and I believe that I'm right, and I believe that you're wrong. Now, it doesn't matter how softly I say it, you're still signaling that I'm right and you're wrong. That's what she did.
Yeah. Well, if the NBA is punishing him for saying that he believes that Pride Month is wrong, then that's wrong. Like, okay. I personally think that it doesn't matter who you are as a business. Individuals have a right to publicly express their beliefs, and you shouldn't be able to fire. When you sign a contract that says, I won't engage in conduct detrimental to the team, in what circumstances that ever, I will never express my own personal religious beliefs. Like that should be something that...
So would you support a civil lawsuit for, violating his freedom of speech then, in this case?
If I were Jaden Ivey, I would 100% sue my employer for unlawful termination. I would say, what did I do that hurt the Chicago Bulls in any way? And by the way, if he was a great basketball player, there's no way that... Like, imagine, Shawn, think about all the things we see NBA players do that they don't get cut for, right? Yeah. So the fact, that's... Yeah.
I saw a meme that highlighted all of the NBA players who have been either accused or convicted of basically punching, beating, abusing their spouses or their girlfriends.
Yeah.
With no consequences. And then this guy comes out and says this, and he's fired. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kobe Bryant was accused of rape, right? Yeah. And he had to...
So was Derrick Rose, like both of them.
Yeah, right. So I have a real problem if you're going to fire somebody because they express their belief. It just becomes dangerous in society if I can't express my own personal belief. Now, you can disagree with that person, right? There's no problem with somebody saying, well, fundamentally, I disagree with you, right? I don't think that, and even the team or the coach or whoever can say, well, we disagree about Pride Month. But I was thinking, because what the BYU basketball player said, it just seems softer. It just seems like less combative. And so that's why I think she was treated differently. But if it's just about the LGBTQ stuff, then, that's wrong.
Right. Yeah, I think there might be room for nuance between implied calls for change and explicit calls for change, right? Like, was it Delaney? Delancey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was like, in her statement, there was an implied we shouldn't have to play on Sunday. But she wasn't telling people that, right? She was just saying, I'm not going to play because I feel like my faith is more important. And I think just generally, if you're willing to stand up there and say, I will take the fall for my actions, even if I don't think that I should, I'm willing to do that, then it opens the door for more genuine communication and change. Whereas if you're saying you have to go my way or the highway, then there's less room for a conversation.
I was watching the comments on the guy's videos on Instagram, and people were like, I'm more concerned that you're recording this video while you're driving a car. Please put the phone down.
Amen.
All right. Melanie gets the points on that one.
Oh, congrats, Melanie.
You just gave me points because I talked last.
Okay. All right, so there's a current Supreme Court case. It's challenging a 2025 executive order from President Trump that seeks to end birthright citizenship by reinterpreting the 14th Amendment. This amendment states that all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. The administration argues this phrase should exclude the children of undocumented immigrants. Representing the government is Solicitor General John Sauer. The Solicitor General is the top lawyer who explains and defends the president's legal positions before the Supreme Court. During the hearing, Justice Neil Gorsuch asked if Native Americans are birthright citizens under this new law. Sauer struggled to answer, first suggesting they are only citizens because of a 1924 law. However, he eventually admitted that they should qualify because they are lawfully domiciled in the United States. This confusing exchange raises an important question. Is this legal challenge based on a consistent view of the Constitution, or does it reveal a specific desire to exclude certain immigrant groups? Melanie's first. Go, Melanie.
Yes.
I'm not a legal scholar, but it feels like it's based on a desire to exclude.
Why?
I think because I imagine the case they're building against immigrants is based off of the clause subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right?
Yeah, yep.
And I think we know that Native American reservations sometimes exist under slightly different laws.
Right.
Than the general federal populace, right?
They are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States in all ways. Right. They are independent sovereign nations within the United States.
Right. So if we're willing to allow them birthright citizenship, then when they're not subject to I think it's a complicated issue. And it feels like this case is being used to target immigrant populations. And I don't necessarily think it should be used that way. Like, if they're going to really hammer home the subject to the jurisdiction thereof, then they should hammer it home equally, right? Against the natives, against the immigrant populations, against people homesteading out in the middle of nowhere and not paying their taxes. It should apply to everyone trying to live outside of the jurisdiction of the federal government, not just a targeted population.
That's a strong case, Shawn.
When you guys assume immigrant groups are targeted for exclusion, why? Based on what evidence and why?
Based on the executive order.
Yeah, but why immigrant group? Like, what do you mean by immigrant groups? Do you mean minorities? Do you mean anyone from Ireland? Do you mean
undocumented immigrant groups?
I mean,
because you said it was focusing on birthright citizenship, right? Which is the idea that children born in the United States to undocumented immigrant parents.
Yeah, but your question is, reveal a specific desire to exclude certain immigrant groups. So what do you mean by that? Do you mean like
just
racism,
undocumented?
So not certain immigrant groups, but immigrant groups in general.
No. Well, no, just in this case, it would be just undocumented immigrants, right? They want to. So what I'm saying, the question is, they're not really concerned about the Constitution. What it is they're really concerned about saying, we want to make sure that undocumented immigrants' children are not legal citizens. Like, they really want to target that group.
So what can we think of as would be a motive for that? I can think of one. One realistic one that doesn't come from the limited viewpoint of just everyone's racist.
Well, I personally think that ultimately it depends on who we're talking about, but I think the Republican Party, let's just say the MAGA crowd, I think that they don't like any non-white immigrant groups. So they want to restrict all non-white immigrants to the United States.
So you believe, that's what I was looking for. You believe that it's a racist based on racism. They hate brown and black people.
I wouldn't say hate.
And
like, it doesn't have to be hate to say we don't want you here.
What is it?
There is a fear in their minds of a different demographic.
Right.
See, I don't know why we can go there. Couldn't you argue that birthright citizenship gives motive to people to get here by any means possible instead of going through a legal or an orderly process? Isn't that a more realistic drive instead of just concluding that people within a certain political party are extremely racist?
But they are racist. But no, what I'm saying, the question isn't are Republicans doing this because they're racist? The question is, are they doing this because they really care about the Constitution and they're trying to follow the Constitution? Or are they more interested in making sure that, are they more interested in the policy outcome? And so they'll argue whatever they need to argue just to get the Constitution to fit the thing they're trying to do. You see what I'm saying? So the question isn't, are Republicans racist and trying to hide that? The question is, are Republicans, when they say, we love the Constitution, we revere the Constitution, we want to follow the Constitution, are they sincere in that? Or are they just trying to now use the Constitution to twist it so that they can get what they want in terms of policy?
I mean, can it be both? I mean, the Constitution isn't it's not clear in every doctrine. It's not clear in every rule or law. So there's all kinds of judgments that come across that switch the meaning of the Constitution in various ways, right?
Sure, but this
is it possible that they revere the Constitution and think that this is a gray area that needs some judgment?
If so, then why would they not? Then if you really revere the Constitution, right? And if you really say, okay, we've got to do what the Constitution says and follow it, like to the letter. And by the way, let's do the original intent, right? Because they say we have to go to original intent of the document. So if you really want to say we're going to argue the original intent, then why do you now say, well, Native Americans, it doesn't actually apply to them? Because original intent, Native Americans would not have qualified as citizens at that time under the original intent. If they were talking about subject to the jurisdiction means that you're the way that they're defining it now. Like, to me, it feels like the Republicans are trying, that they've decided they don't want undocumented immigrants' children to be U.S. citizens. Somebody goes through the Constitution and tries to find some like legal ambiguity so they can twist it in a way to make it fit. And now they're trying to make that argument, but it's not logically consistent with what they're making the argument to be. So,
and I feel like if they cared about the Constitution, there's an established amendment process, right? And yeah, it sucks and it's kind of complicated and convoluted, but if you're talking about the citizenship of actual living people, maybe a complicated process is far more necessary than governing by executive order.
But if it is a gray area, then there's room for debate, and isn't that what's happening? The debate is happening.
If it's a gray area and there's room for debate, then you have to take your side of the debate and stay consistent in your side in the debate, and not change your position based on the group that you happen to be talking about. Right?
That doesn't sound like what any politician does. That seems like all politicians.
Maybe the question shouldn't be, do Republicans care about the Constitution, but do politicians care about the Constitution?
Yeah.
Great question. I think that's a better question.
Yeah, well, so the reason I bring this up is because Mike Lee is a member of our church, right? An active member of our church, and calls himself a constitutional scholar and says he reveres the Constitution. And he's a proponent of this particular view of the Constitution, which, by the way, I don't think the 14th Amendment, it even suggests anything close to that. And so I just think it's like, I think that there are a lot of members of our church that are following this debate. And I just think it's important to point out that even conservative Republicans who say they love the Constitution don't stick with their position if it implies something that they don't want it to imply. They suddenly change their interpretation of the Constitution.
So, Matt, you know better than me. Does the Constitution of the United States, is it explicit and clear about birthright citizenship?
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, it is. Even this phrase here, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? It says everybody who's born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States is a lawful citizen of the United States. To me, that's clear.
So then I guess if their argument is then it's not clear and we're going to debate it to try and get something we want, you're going to judge that as, well, that's inconsistent and hypocrisy.
No. Right? I'm fine if you want to say the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof. If you want to argue that means that if you're undocumented, you're somehow not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. I don't even know how you make that legal leap. But if that is what you want to say, is that somehow an undocumented immigrant in the United States is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, then don't you have to argue that Native Americans are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, since they live in sovereign nations? And then,
furthermore,
if you want to go historically and say, what did that amendment mean at that time? Well, we know that Congress stripped all Native Americans of their U.S. citizenship 20 years after this 14th Amendment was passed. So there's no way you could argue that at that time when they passed the 14th Amendment, they intended that Native Americans born on reservations would be U.S. citizens. So what I'm saying is, if you want to make that argument in the conservative framework, you have to conclude that Native Americans as well are not birthright citizens. But they're not making that argument.
That does seem logical. Yeah. What are you going to say, Melanie?
I just think, like, if you want to make the argument that undocumented children are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, then you can't be deporting them.
Yeah,
because they aren't subject to your jurisdiction.
Right. They have no authority, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That's logical. That is logical. It seems like they have no way to justify this. Yeah, that makes sense. You've convinced me, both of you.
Shawn gets the points on this one.
For submitting. Shawn.
No, not for submitting, Shawn. You get the point, Shawn, because this is something I learned. You remember when you sent me that thing on Instagram about the changes in party identification over the years?
Yep.
I was like, I think on this podcast, I talk way above the level of the listening audience from time to time. And so you get the point, Shawn, because you force me. I'm like, I feel like I'm explaining this super well, but you're like, no. You got to explain it in a way that you're not just saying everybody.
Like me. Right, like to the layman. I like that.
Shawn,
that's my value.
You get my points because you make me think about what I'm saying.
Right. Right.
I don't often change my mind, but at least you make me think about
it. and listeners, that's an example of a backhanded compliment and a kind, direct compliment.
Well,
but that's okay. I love you for it.
But I will also, Shawn, I'll give you the points because you did your best to try to defend the conservative position on that. Right? And listeners,
it was a lost cause, but you tried.
No, I think you were right, Matt. I misunderstood the intent of your question and started arguing the motive of the Republican Party, and then I finally understood what the question meant and agreed with you. Yeah, but it did require you to dumb it down to my level.
But listeners sometimes complain and they're like, "There's nobody on there that's MAGA," and it's like, well, I'm sorry. We're trying, like Shawn does his best to try to represent like what a conservative Republican member of the church would think. It is a very, huh?
Yeah, I'm a little more traditional Republican though. Like the MAGA. I mean, we're about the next topic. We're going to talk about LDS and MAGA, right?
That's right. Okay, so there's a recent study based on surveys that have been done for the last 15 years. It shows that members of the LDS Church are moving towards the Democratic Party faster than any other group in the United States. While most members of the church still support the Republican Party, the gap between the two parties has narrowed significantly over the last 20 years. This shift is partly due to a Trump effect, as many voters feel the current MAGA movement conflicts with religious values like kindness and civility. Additionally, younger and more educated members are becoming more progressive on social issues such as immigration and racial justice. And I would add the LGBTQ stuff, although the people didn't say that. Experts believe this trend may continue if the Republican Party maintains its current style or if church members continue to achieve higher levels of education. So this is the big question, or this is just the question with this. Is the Republican Party moving away from the church and its values? Is MAGA inconsistent with the moral teachings of the church? Go first, progressive young Melanie.
This is a hot topic for me because I have found that for myself, my political leanings do lean significantly more progressive than MAGA. And for me, it feels like all of my beliefs are deeply, deeply rooted in the morality taught by the church. But I have a number of friends who are part of the MAGA movement and who are also faithful members of the church. And so I don't know if I can say for sure that the Republican Party is not aligned with the church. Like, that's how I feel. Like, if it were a world of just me, I would say that.
Okay.
But I have enough friends who are faithful members that I don't know if I can make that as an umbrella claim.
So what I'm hearing from you is, in your head, you can't see how anyone could be MAGA and align with the moral teachings of the church. But since you know some people who do, you are willing to accept that it must be possible.
I don't think she said that. Is that what she said?
It is kind of what I said.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Like, I don't get how they are that way, but they are, and I trust them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a humble and wise, like, honestly, Melanie, like, impressive answer. Seriously, I don't mean to joke. Because that means that you are going, like, I have a belief system politically that is driven by my belief system religiously. And I'm willing to look at other people who have the same faith that I do, and they come to different political conclusions. And so I'm going to judge them on their religious level, not on their political level. Yeah? I mean,
yeah, that's what I try to do.
I mean, that's awesome. The world would be such a great place if they were all Melanies. Honestly, that's incredible.
You, Shawn. Thank you.
Okay, Shawn, I'm going to just answer the question since you didn't answer the question.
Oh, okay. I was just praising your daughter.
Oh, okay. Okay, go ahead and answer then.
Okay. Okay. I think the leader of the MAGA movement is clearly an example of exactly what you said. Like, everyone that I talk to who is Republican and an active member of the church, most of them, not all, but a lot of them say the same thing. Like, how can we support a guy who is so immoral? that goes against, he himself lives against every standard of our belief system. There are a few active members of the church who I know that are very supportive of his policies, not his behavior, but his policies. And that's the most common thing I hear. But that doesn't explain this shift. That doesn't. So, yeah, I've scratched my head. I can't say, Matt, that the Republican Party is moving away from the church and its values. Donald Trump is an example of moving away from the church and its values, and you could argue that he is the Republican Party, but I don't know. I think the MAGA movement itself isn't necessarily inconsistent with the moral teachings of the church. Can you really say that?
I can say that there are elements of where the Republican Party is going today, and led by the MAGA movement, that is definitely inconsistent with the church. I think that the MAGA position on immigration is inconsistent with the values of the church. I think that the MAGA position on race and equality, the anti-DEI stuff, is inconsistent. I think that the willingness of the MAGA movement to...
Hang on. Are you suggesting that the church practices DEI? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, for sure.
What evidence do you have of that?
So, in my opinion...
There's no way.
In my opinion, DEI is the same as belonging. And so when the church says we all belong to the church and there's a place for us all in the church, to me, that's what DEI is.
But you can't just change the definition of DEI. The world and the Democrat definition of DEI is explicitly putting quotas together to bring in people, whether they're qualified or not, to tick a box for basically racism.
Okay,
but to be a certain race no matter what.
But the Republican approach to DEI at the moment is to fire everybody who's a racial minority, or to fire everybody.
What?
Yeah, that's what they...
Whoa. You're my political scientist, so I'm going to be open-minded.
Yeah.
But how can you possibly make that claim? Where is the evidence of that?
I mean, there are at least 100 stories in the news of people that Doge fired for DEI things simply because of their race, because they were a woman or because they were a minority. That happen all throughout the federal government. And then you look at what Pete Hegseth is doing in the military.
Wait, hang on. Did they get fired because they were Latino or a woman, or did they get fired because they were hired under a unjust DEI law?
I mean,
because they dismantled the DEI standard.
But should it matter why they were hired, or should it matter the work they'd done since they were hired?
Right. It doesn't matter if you're firing somebody. But
what evidence? But what evidence do you see? You've just jumped to a conclusion, though. Maybe they did keep on the people who were performing, no matter their skin color or sex or gender. Maybe they did. You don't know that.
Well,
How do you know that?
I just did a survey of let me think, 800 federal employees, asking them what happened, and according to them, they were firing racial minorities and women.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, so anyhow. So I think that that's wrong, right? If whether or not that's happening, I guess we could disagree. But
I agree that it would be wrong. It would be absolutely dead wrong if it was happening. Yeah. I'm with you.
I think that the MAGA movement and the Republican Party at the moment, I think that what they're doing in terms of military, where they're just killing people in other countries, I think that that's wrong.
Melanie agreed. Did you agree, Melanie?
I have thoughts about what's going on militarily right now.
Yeah, Trump's discussion of war crimes, like their willingness to excuse, right? Like some people get blown up and destroyed. So there are definitely things where the Republican Party is moving that are inconsistent with the moral teachings of the church. What I can say is...
Oh, go ahead.
I would say, though, I have friends that are Republicans that, because they feel like that society has gone too far in pushing, in promoting the LGBTQ agenda, specifically transgender rights. I could see how somebody would say that that's consistent with the moral teachings of the church, being concerned about that. I think that there are people who support Republicans because they're concerned about the moral decay of society and the erosion of the family, and they feel like the Republican Party is more supportive of families. And I can see policies in which Republicans seem to be more supportive of the traditional nuclear family. And so I can understand why some people would say some aspects of the MAGA Republican Party are consistent with the church. So my ultimate conclusion is, like all political parties, there's some things where the Republicans are consistent, and there's things where they don't support the church.
I mean, that's the right answer, right? These parties are man-made. They are power-influenced. They are money and profit-driven. There's no way they're going to be consistently right on moral issues. They're going to follow the votes, follow the money.
Yeah. But I will say, I believe that most members of our church who are MAGA were raised Republicans. They were raised in an environment where the church and the Republican Party fit together, and they're not, I'll just say, maybe politically sophisticated enough to see how maybe they don't need to support the Republican Party and everything, right? And young people are not raised in the same kind of environment in the church today. We have more, like Shawn, when you and I were growing up in the church, almost all the church members came from like this Utah world, and it was gradually sort of spreading out. But that's not the world of today. Today, you have people joining the church all over the world, and they're coming to like the BYUs and the BYU Idahos, and they're bringing those views with them. And as they interact with other people at those places, that's what's making people more progressive. It's that Melanie's experience at BYU is completely different than our experience at BYU was. Because, Shawn, if we met a Democrat at BYU, what would we have said to them? It would have been like, what's wrong with you? Like, what, do you hate God? Do you hate Jesus?
Do you think you would have back then?
Oh, for sure I would have back then.
Are you serious?
Do you remember Elder Caton in the MTC? Where
I sure do.
We were all talking about like real hardcore conservative stuff, and he's like, I would actually call him a conservative, but he was from Iowa, and he had like a little bit different views. I remember he said something about like the artwork in the Ensign magazine wasn't the best art he'd ever seen in his life, and we were like, you heretic, you horrible person, how dare you question the Ensign
I wasn't reacting that way. Maybe you were, but I wasn't.
Oh. Well, he would say stuff, and we'd be like, what? Yeah, okay, anyhow.
Okay, so but you've now shifted to a bit of a tangent on the question, and you're trying to now discover what is the reason that there's this 20% or 10% shift left in the church, and you're suggesting it comes from a more diverse culture in the younger generations of our church. That's what the reason is. That's what you're thinking.
That's what I think.
Melanie, what do you think?
I think there's something to be said for what my dad's saying. I think, like, I don't know, we live in the information age or whatever, where there are so many connections all over the globe and all over the country. And I think a lot of people's political ideals, especially in my generation, depend on the social media sphere you fall into at the ages of like 12 or 13.
So you guys are sheep. So millennials and Gen Zers are sheep.
Excuse me. Everyone's a sheep. It's not just us. We're all sheep.
Right. Right. And Shawn, you didn't like it before when I said something about political sophistication, but this is the thing. If you grow up in a world where Republican Party and church are the same thing, and then you encounter this other world that tells you like some of these things of the Republican Party that you've had tied to your religious belief systems are not true, it actually ends up attacking your faith in Jesus Christ. I've learned, because I teach political science at BYU Idaho, so I have to be so cautious.
You see that.
And how I like, how you peel back those layers. And so, like, the fact that there's so many members of our church that are Republican and that it's shifting, I'm just saying what's happening is that people are not coming with things so tightly connected as young people today as they were when we were younger. And so you can peel things back a little bit more, but you still have to be really, really cautious. Like,
I'm glad you're in that position, Matt, honestly, because I think one of the biggest problems, right, the scriptures teach us about, I know thy works, they're neither hot nor cold, but they're lukewarm, and I would that they're hot or cold, because if they're lukewarm, I spew thee out of my mouth. I think what you're suggesting is, if I'm raised a certain way, a sheep, Melanie, a sheep, and I'm attaching my politics to my religion, just as a sheep, just because that's what everyone does, and that's what everyone believes, that is lukewarm mentality. And you're right, I like when that gets challenged. Go, Melanie, what?
I think that it's very hard for most people to separate politics and religion. I think it's not inherently a sheep mentality, because I think our political stances, we take our political stands based off of what we believe is morally right, the majority of us at least. And I think our morals are inherently shaped by our religious beliefs. So I think it's not necessarily wrong to say, I think most people don't sit down and say, how have my religious beliefs shaped my morality, and how has my morality shaped my politics? Because that's a mess. And I think not everyone has the time and resources to sit down and sift through all of those things. So while, like, yes, I wish everyone would, I don't think it's fair to call people sheep for having those connections in their heads.
Okay. I'll give you an example, Shawn.
Good defense, Melanie.
I had a conversation with a BYU Idaho student today, and they were saying, we were talking about these, because President Oaks gave that beautiful talk, and he was talking about how the world's not quite so toxic, and he was in a fight with somebody, and he's like, I'll admit it, I'm a little bit homophobic, I'm a little bit sexist. He's like, I'm maybe a little bit racist. He's like, but I'm not really racist. I just think racist jokes are funny, and there aren't really any other jokes that are funny. There's like basically dad jokes that aren't that funny, and the racist jokes are the only jokes that are really funny. And I was like, you know that like President Meredith spoke about that specifically, saying we shouldn't tell racist jokes. They're not funny. And he's like, it really took him back, and he's like, yeah, but they're the only jokes that are funny. Like, it's not like I really believe that stuff. It's not like I really think that stuff, right? And so I know, Shawn, when I say to you, like, Republicans are racists, that you're like, no, they're not. But what I'm saying is, like, it's this stuff that people are raised with. It's the way that they feel, the way they experience the world, and it's all tied together in their faith. And to say to them, your religion teaches you racism is wrong, they're like, well, I know racism is wrong. It's wrong for me to hate people of another race. But to say, but that also means racist jokes are wrong. Then they're like, whoa. Now you're like making me feel uncomfortable about like that's just the world a lot of people live in.
Can I provide another example of this?
Yeah.
I was talking to one of my friends in the physics major the other day, and I'm in a course on the Middle East right now. Awesome. Great time. But I was talking to my friend, and he was like, well, I really think that Islam as a belief system is inherently less moral than Christianity because it's not based on the teachings of Jesus Christ. And he and I ended up having like this whole conversation about it. And like all I wanted to do was help him see that that belief is inherently dangerous. Because the minute you believe Islam as a belief system is less moral than Christianity, then suddenly it's an easy generalization to make about all people who practice Islam. And it was a really hard conversation to have with him because in his mind it was so true that Christ is the source of all truth and truth is the source of morality. So Christianity must be more moral than any religion that doesn't believe in Christ.
And then it's just a baby step from that to saying we can restrict the religious liberties of Islam because it's a less moral religion than ours.
Right. And that wasn't the claim he was pushing for in that moment.
Right.
But it was a very scary foundation to have.
But in fairness, because I have Democrat friends too, we have Democrat listeners. For you Democrats, same you guys, right? Democrats are supporting plenty of things that are not consistent with the values of the church. And Melanie, who's super progressive, can tell us what they are. But there's definitely things that Democrats support that's not consistent with the church.
You overestimate my knowledge of politics.
You can't think of a single thing the Democrats support that's inconsistent with the values of the church. It's okay if you can't, because Shawn will jump in and help you.
Yeah, I need to phone a Shawn.
Matt named a bunch of them. Well, I don't even need to name them, Matt. You're the ones that named them. Yeah. You said the Republican values that are against all that, the whole big list you gave. Those are Democrat stances for sure. Yeah, you named them.
I would say this, and I want to be careful how I say it, but I think that the Democrat Party makes people believe in a utopia that can't possibly exist. And they make people believe that if everybody could just come along and see things the right way, that we could all live in this utopia and everybody would love each other and everybody would be equal and there would be no problems. And that's not a reality. Like when situations where I'm in where the Democrats are running everything, some people are still feeling left behind, but they feel silenced about it along the way. And so there's sometimes this dream of like this Democrat socialist utopia that doesn't feel so utopia-like. Would you agree with that, Shawn?
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're living in a wonderful... your state is dominated by Democrats. You know what it is when Democrats get what they want. Does it feel
It's a utopia, right?
I live in the very conservative end of this utopia. Remember, San Diego's very conservative.
Sure, but
and you've been to San Francisco, Matt. Is that the utopia you're talking about?
Well, I want to know this, Shawn. What is gas prices the last time you looked in your area?
nearing $6.
Oh.
Right. And it's probably like 4 or something like that where I'm at, right?
And that, Melanie, is your Democrat liberal utopia.
Right.
I know.
It prices some people out, right? It prices some people out of, not everybody gets to experience the joys of the Democrat utopia because
it's an exclusive utopia. That is for sure.
That to me is not consistent with the values of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay, let's move to the big question because it was General Conference and I want to know, what are your takeaways from General Conference and anything we should do differently moving forward?
Wow.
Yeah, I want to pose a question to follow up this question.
Okay.
Because as I was listening to President Oaks' remarks in the Sunday morning session where he talked about loving our neighbor and practicing charity, I was getting a lot of like politically affirming pro-Democrat messages, like we just talked about. So Shawn, I'm curious, as someone who doesn't have the same instinctive political leanings that I do, what were your takeaways and like calls to action from that talk?
Same as yours.
Okay.
And I think it was the not concluding that a Republican or Democrat party had anything to do with it. I don't conclude that, but I think that was a theme throughout most of conference and most of the talks was God values the individual, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's the least of us, and we need to make a shift to value the individuals more so than their party affiliation, more so than their skin color or their financial status, whatever. So I've heard that a lot, Melanie, that only Democrats care about the poor or their neighbors. I don't understand that. Here's my lived experience with that, Melanie. Whenever in my ward that is 90% Republican and I have 10% of my friends who are Democrats, whenever someone is in need, and this is overspeaking it maybe a little bit, but this has happened 5 or 10 times, the Republicans come together and start giving of their own stuff. The Democrats go, the church will take care of them. I know that's a generalization, but they don't show up and they don't participate. They literally go, look, the reason we pay our tithing is because we have a system where we are contributing and the government or the organization will take care of these people. The Republicans go, what organization to take care of the people? We are the people that take care of our people. But that's just an anecdotal experience, Melanie. I know that. I know that's not everywhere, but I do see that in real life.
This is an interesting observation. I like this observation.
I think it's interesting and important. The 2 messages that were repeated from President Nelson was number 1, peace, and then number 2, the importance of personal revelation. And President Oaks just said it in a little sentence in a BYU devotional, this idea that Satan is getting good at deceiving people. And if you don't know how to get revelation, you'll be led astray. And that was a bigger theme in conference. A lot of people were repeating that. I think it's really instructive that like those are the 2 things, because I think that is what people struggle with. It is hard to make peace. And I think that's why we do this podcast, because I think that it's important for people to see you can disagree about stuff and still be peaceful. But also I think the other reason we do it is because the more you can kind of peel away at some of that stuff, the easier it is to make peace with those around you. So like I was thinking about on another podcast I do with my sister, we interviewed an active member of the church who's gay. And we also interviewed an active member of the church who's transgender. And I think
Palestinian.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did an active member who's Palestinian, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think sometimes it's really, really helpful for us to see that these people we see as adversaries, right? That's the word that President Oaks used. These people we see as adversaries are members of our church. They're among us. And as soon as we start putting people in boxes and saying, you're my adversary, you're not welcome here, then we're messing up.
So question, Melanie, why do you associate everything, or do you, that Matt just said with the Democrat Party? Why do you associate that with a political party, or do you not?
I think my experience thus far has not been perfect by any means, right? But from what I've seen in my life, the people I know who are like hardcore MAGA Republicans are far more likely to make... Okay, actually, I think what it is, I know way more Republicans than I know Democrats. So every fallacy of humanity, right? Every harsh judgment or overstatement or violent reaction, I associate with a Republican.
Amazing.
Because I don't know enough flawed Democrats.
How insightful, Melanie. Okay, so you've got that is really insightful. That sounds like an epiphany.
I think the Democratic Party markets itself as the party of inclusion, right? Because in some ways it is. Whether affirmative action or DEI, I think is what you guys were calling it, whether it's the perfect approach or not, it is the approach that works on targeting the racism that's ingrained in our society, right? The Republican Party doesn't have an alternative to that. And the Democratic Party has more welfare programs, right? So if I say, oh, let's take care of the poor, which party do I see doing that as a party? I see the Democrats doing it.
So what do you think of my anecdotal reaction to that? Literally, where I see the Democrats... Go ahead.
The Democrats are used to trusting the institutions.
Yeah.
They say, if we want to take care of the poor, let's fund programs to take care of the poor.
Yeah,
so
and
they
then
say,
they
tithing
don't
is the program we're funding to take care of the poor.
But then they
the
don't
Republicans would rather do it themselves.
That's right. So they don't get involved in taking care of the poor, ever.
Everybody's flawed.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say.
I will say
you have a generalization there too, Shawn, because you do know Democrats that give to the poor. Yeah, Levi's a Democrat who we know helps out poor whenever he gets a chance.
Yeah. But Levi is one of the most special people I've ever met. That guy is.
So you're doing the same thing as Melanie in reverse.
I told you it was anecdotal. I know it's anecdotal.
I had another conference takeaway though.
Yeah.
I think another message I got, I can't remember if someone said it in a talk or if it was in a book I was reading. I don't know. This weekend's been a blur. But I got a very strong message that if you want to change a society, the best thing you can do is change as an individual, right? And I think with President Oak's message to love our neighbor and take care of those around us, and with Shawn's anecdotal evidence, right? I think we can say we have these parties that are proposing these grand societal changes, but which party we align with matters way less than how we are choosing to live in our personal lives. Are we taking steps to see people who aren't normally seen? Are we taking steps to love the people who are hard to love? Are we listening when someone may point out a gap in our understanding? And I think if all of us as members, regardless of our political parties, focus a lot more on what we are doing and who we want to become, that's like the best solution.
Mic drop, Melanie. Awesome.
Beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I'm sure that we said something that made you mad this week. Probably it's because we want to let you practice loving your adversaries. But also, we're happy to hear from you. Let us know what you think. We'll read your comment, even if it's nasty and mean. I'll just soften it a little bit. Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
It's always sad to say goodbye, but we hope you'll join us again next week. New episodes drop each Wednesday. In the meantime, subscribe to the podcast, give us a like, and visit our website for past episodes. You can comment on the show at realmormonism@gmail.com. Thank you for making us one of the most listened to podcasts. We love our listeners.